doesn't work well with open borders. And secondly, we have no guarantees of reciprocity from other countries. Their immigrants can come here and can qualify for citizenship for their children, and if they want welfare benefits simply by virtue of being here, and that is not reciprocated. So it's not so. It seems to me that this is my last thing.
Okay.
It sounds like you're saying we need to open up, but we're not going to demand anybody else do it.
Well, the issue is, in your case, it's not so much the immigration; it's a welfare problem, right?
Yes, but it seems like there's an order to fix this in rapid. Right.
Well, if you're going to restrict the borders and not the welfare system, you're going to have this perpetual system. It's never going to stop. So you either have to restructure the welfare system or get rid of it, or nothing will ever happen.
More immigration correlates with smaller state size compared to private sector size. And it's fairly simple to see, just common sense, is that, for instance, Switzerland the other year proposed giving $35,000 a year to every citizen just for being alive. Now, this obviously wouldn't be possible if Switzerland had open borders, right? They're like the most restrictive country in the world for immigration. They don't let anyone in, pretty much. So you can just see how mathematically, you can't have open borders and welfare. So the question is, causally, how does this work out? If you allow more immigrants in with a welfare state, wouldn't this just blow up the welfare state and you'd have more socialism? People have looked into how this actually works out and tried to do studies on this. Cato has a good one showing that there's a very small impact overall, but it does actually correlate with more economic freedom. Looking at a broad-scale study of do more immigrants correlate with more economic freedom, and you can kind of common sense see that welfare and free movement are incompatible. In the extreme case, you couldn't leave East Germany, right? Communism, there's no free movement. The more socialist states tend to have less free movement just because they can't give handouts to everyone on the planet. And the states with no welfare, like Hong Kong, Singapore, these are the most free market states. You're allowed to rent to whoever you want, regardless of where they were born. Date whoever you want, regardless of where they were born. You can move in and out of the country. Very low levels of government intervention in these countries like Hong Kong and Singapore and the U.S. before 1928, pretty much the same system where anyone could show up and leave. There was like a medical quarantine. That was about it.
Just one comment. Aside from the economic arguments, Chapter 6 of the Road to Serfdom has high discussion of the importance of the rule of law. Now, there are tremendous moral hazards that come with allowing the law to be overrun for generations, and then all of a sudden deciding not only the illegal people who came here, but the people who have employed them, and the people who have gained at the expense of their neighbors by virtue of employing them against law are suddenly exempt from any penalty for their actions. I think that Hayek would be aghast to think that anyone in his name would suggest some sort of amnesty.
Well,
Go ahead.
Bastia, the easiest way to make a law respected is to make a law respectable. That's Bastia, not Hayek. But you're always going to have people breaking the weed laws just because it's an obvious law. It's going to be broken. Alcohol prohibition, destroyed respect for the rule of law. And even more extreme than cannabis prohibition or alcohol prohibition is human prohibition. This is going to breed extreme disrespect for the rule of law. When you say humans are in this apartheid system where if they're born in Mexico, they can never come to the U.S. And vice versa.
Wait a second. Nobody says that.
But that's the rule. Today it's impossible to get in legally. There is no legal way to get in from Mexico. They let like a few thousand people in every year. There's really no legal process.
So you just denied your own premise when you said there was no way to get in and a few thousand people do.
Very few. It's like really impossible to get in from Mexico. Millions of people want to come in from Mexico and they can't get in legally. So this is like weed. People want to smoke weed. Any country. I mean, why do I want to? I'm making an argument about the rule of law to
we'd love to have tens of thousands of Chinese entrepreneurs with $1 million to develop companies.
Very specifically to the rule of law, though, I just really kind of wanted to make this point of that, why do you want heroin users or potheads? It's like if we're talking about the rule of law and what, institutes the rule of law and how do we uphold the rule of law, of these things like alcohol prohibition are horrendous for the rule of law because no one follows the law. And it's the same thing with human prohibition, just no one's following the law. It's never going to be enforced. You're never going to enforce the law, and it's a bad law and breeds disrespect for the rule of law. If you lowered the quotas back to like an LSI, there's no illegal immigration before 1920 because anyone could get in. You just showed up, and there was a medical quarantine if you were sick. And it's like, you know, if you want to get rid of illegal immigration...
Would you be giving... All right.
How can you even justify the medical quarantine?
If you want to continue this discussion, we have the room until 10 o'clock, but we should wrap things up.
Okay.
So.
I just want to state, if anyone wants to get more into the whole Austrian economics thing, we meet every Wednesday. And we're also selling copies of Hazlitt's Economics in One Lesson. It's $10 per copy. And we also have Papa's Austrian Method in Economic Science.
Okay, can I ask a quick... I'm going to ask a question, but I don't expect it to get answered because it would take too long. Okay. but my original idea for this was the state of the economy. There are two parts of that. One of it is that the second one is what are the most efficient things that public policy people could do to improve the economy quickly. But the second, the previous one is do we know what the state of our economy is? We are told, we are flooded with statistics from the government and processed to the media about unemployment rates and inflation rates and relative standards of living and wages and the stock market and bond prices and real estate prices and car sales, etc., etc., etc. But one of the things that lots of Americans have felt in the last 4 years is that the numbers have been tweaked, that what the absolute definition of these numbers is one thing, but at least if they're consistent over time, you can see whether things are getting better or worse. But if what the unemployment rate or the inflation rate meant in 2005 is not what it means today, then we don't even have that metric. So that's just food for thought. Okay, how do we know what the real state of the economy is? I realize that's another hour, so I'm just, you know.
Okay, well, thank you very much.